In economics class today, we shall be looking at price determination. In our previous classes, we discussed demand theory and supply theory. So when we are talking about price determination, we are looking at the interaction of demand and supply that we have explained in our previous classes. And here we'll be looking at price equilibrium, that is equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Then we shall also be looking at the effect of demand on equilibrium price and quantity. Price system. This is the determination of prices by the interaction of the invisible forces of demand and supply. We call it price system. We can also call it price mechanism. That is, in this system, they allow invisible arms to determine prices of goods and services. That is, prices of goods and services are determined according to markets. Individual producers are not the one determining it. Likewise, individual consumers are not the one determining the price. But the prices of goods and services will be determined according to market forces. That is, how they demand and how they supply. So in this system, we are going to look at what we call equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Equilibrium price. This is the price at which quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal. So when we are talking about equilibrium price in supply and demand interaction, we are looking at the points where quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal. And what do I mean by this? That quantity demanded by consumers and quantity supplied by producers are equal at a particular price. The implication is that at this price, this is the price that the consumers are willing and ready to buy a particular quantity. And we are talking about supply. That is, this is also the price at which producer is willing and ready to offer a particular commodity for sale. Right? Now, if two of them can come to a point where the desire of the consumers are equal to the desire of the producer, then we are talking about equilibrium price. That is a point where the price is stable. There is no excess, there is no shortage. So the quantity that the producers are willing to take to the market at that price is equal to the price that consumers are willing and ready to buy. That is what we call equilibrium price. From the diagram before us, we have price axis here. We have quantity axis. Now, this is demand curve that will say it is a downward sloping. This is supply curve that will say it is an upward sloping. If you remember vividly in our previous classes, we said demand curve is downward sloping because as the price is dropping, as the price is decreasing, quantity demanded will be increasing. That's why we have the demand curve to be downward sloping. But we said on the supply side that as a producer, you'll be willing to take more to the market when you discover that there's an increase in price of your commodity. So as the price of the commodity is increasing, quantity supplied to is increasing. That's why we have it to be upward sloping. So the demand supply curve is upward sloping. Where the two curves meet, we call it equilibrium points. Where the two curves meet, we call it equilibrium point. Looking at the diagram, we have E, that's the point E. Point E is a point where quantity supplied and quantity demanded meet. So the quantity will now be what? QE. But what's going to be the price? The price is PE. So meaning that PE implies equilibrium price, while QE implies equilibrium quantity. Now, when you look at the diagram vividly, you observe that above point E, that is above equilibrium price, we have PE1. And when we trace it to supply curve and demand curve, from supply curve, we can see B here. This is supply curve. And when you look at demand curve, we can see A here. Meaning that the supply is greater than demand. So here we are going to have excess supply. That is surplus of goods by the producer. Let's trace it horizontal axis. That is where we have the quantity axis. If we trace, looking at supply curve B, trace it down, we have Q3 here. But when you look at demand curve, trace it down, we have Q1. So it implies that producer is willing and ready to offer Q3, while consumers, that is the consumer, the buyer, are willing to buy Q1. Why? Because the price is above the equilibrium price, P1. So at P1, producers will be willing to take more to the market for sales because of the increase in price of their commodity. But consumers will not be willing to buy more because of increase in price of the commodity. So that is at P1, consumers are buying less, while producers are supplying more. So we are going to have a gap. The gap between A and B is what we call surplus excess supply. Let's come down below the equilibrium price. Below the equilibrium price, we have P2. When you look at P2, we can see on the supply curve, we have point C. And on the demand curve, we have point D. Point D is telling us, that is quantity as that consumers are willing to buy Q4, while producers are willing to supply Q2. So here we are going to have demand to be what? To be more than supply shortage. That is, what the producers have supplied is less than what the consumer are willing to buy. So we have shortage, excess demand. So why do you have excess demand? Because consumers are willing to buy at P2. They are willing to buy more at P2, while producers are willing to supply less than what? Than Q2, that is P2. So as the price is decreasing, quantity demanded will be increasing. That's why we have Q4. But on the supply side, as the price is decreasing, quantity supply will be reducing. That's why we have Q2. So the gap between point C and point D is what we call shortage. That is excess demand. Now, how can we come back to equilibrium price? Let's take it from P2 again. Consumers, they want more, while producers, they are willing to supply less. So far demand is greater than supply. Consumers will be willing to buy more, will be willing to buy more commodity at higher price. That is, when the price can come up a little bit, you will see that the gap will be becoming closed. In time of wideness, it will be very low. Let's come up a little bit. Let's assume we are here. If you trade it, you see that here, the gap between here and here will be dropped. So as we are coming up gradually, right, demand will be reducing, supply will be increasing. That is, producers are willing to take more to the market when the price increases. But consumer will buy more because they need it, because of a shortage. So the price will come up. So gradually we come back to equilibrium price. Now, assuming we have surplus, how can we come back to equilibrium? Now, because the producers have produced more than what they need in the market. So in order for the good not to get damaged, what will they do? They will reduce the price. As they are reducing the price, supply will be reducing gradually, demand will be coming towards where supply is. So on the long run, they will come back to equilibrium. So that's how equilibrium price will be achieved again, as well as the equilibrium quantity. So in summary, when we have shortage and surplus, to come back to equilibrium price, let's take it from shortage. When demand is greater than supply, consumer will be willing to pay more for the commodity because of our shortage, right? So from there, equilibrium price will occur. But where we have surplus, producer will be willing to reduce the price so that consumer can buy more. So at the end, we come back to equilibrium point. So to summarize, point A and B imply surplus, excess supply, while point C and D imply shortage, excess demand. So to come back to equilibrium, supply will be increasing by increasing the price. So on the long run, we come back to this. Effects of demand on equilibrium price and quantity. We've analyzed change in demand and change in supply. But we want to look at demand first. And under change in demand, we have two types: increase in demand and decrease in demand. So let's see how increase in demand will affect equilibrium price and quantity. Looking at the diagram before us, you will observe that this is supply curve. I will say it's a upward sloping. This is demand curve. I will say it's a downward sloping. And we have our equilibrium point here. So horizontally, here, that is horizontally, we have the equilibrium quantity. Then vertically, we have equilibrium price. That is at point E, where we have equilibrium point, we have equilibrium price to be PE, while equilibrium quantity to be QE. Right? Now, because there is an increase in demand, and whenever there is an increase in demand, demand curve will shift to the right, as we have observed here. That D1, DD refers to as the initial demand curve, meeting supply at E, but all the supply constant, while demand curve shifts to the right, that we call increase in demand. We can see the arrow, that demand curve has shifted to the right, that is to D1, D1 curve, that is demand curve, new demand curve, D1, D1, holding supply curve constant. So you observe that demand will be greater than supply. So in that case, new equilibrium position will be established at this point. And what is going to happen? Equilibrium price will increase, equilibrium quantity too will increase. Why? Because supply is constant, but demand has increased. So in that case, the two equilibrium, price and quantity, will increase at the same time. So that's why we have new equilibrium point to be PE, while new equilibrium price to be PE1, new equilibrium quantity to be QE1. So we call it increase in demand. That is the effects of demand on equilibrium price. And to be precise, that is when there is an increase in demand. So to summarize this, that whenever there is an increase in demand, it will affect the equilibrium price and quantity positively. That is, equilibrium price will increase, equilibrium quantity too will increase. The second effect of demand on equilibrium price is what we call decrease in demand. We have also analyzed decrease in demand when we explain demand change in demand curve. That whenever we have a decrease in demand curve will shift backwards from the original and create another one, and something is going to happen. But we want to look at the effect of decrease in demand on equilibrium price and quantity. Take for instance, this is our supply curve. This is our demand curve. We have another demand curve, we call it D2, D2. And when you look at it very well, you will see that there is a backward shift in demand curve. Here, from here to here. So that is, we have DD to be the initial demand curve, and the new curve is D2, D2, which implies decrease in demand curve. What effect is it going to have on equilibrium? Now, before the shift in demand curve, you observe that we have equilibrium point here, E. Then we have equilibrium price here, PE. And we have equilibrium quantity here, QE. Because of decrease in demand, right, the demand curve shifts backward. We have D2, D2, holding supply curve constant. Right? Now, having observed decrease in demand, and in that case, supply will be greater than demand. So, when we have supply to be greater than demand, so there is no way price will now come down. So, due to that, it leads to decrease in equilibrium price and decrease in equilibrium quantity. So, looking at the diagram very well, this is the new demand curve that we say it shifted backward, D2, D2, and we have established new equilibrium position to be E2 here, new equilibrium quantity to be QE2, new equilibrium price to be PE2. Why do we have this? Because demand has affected equilibrium price and quantity negatively. So that's why we have this. So in a nutshell, new equilibrium price is PE2, new equilibrium quantity is QE2 as a result of a decrease in demand affecting equilibrium price and quantity. So whenever there is a decrease in demand, having supply curve constant. Both equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity will reduce, as we have observed from the diagram. Example 1. Use the diagram to answer the question 1 and 2. Question 1. In the diagram above, the equilibrium price is A, OQ1, B, OQ0, C, P1, P0, D, OP0. The right answer is D, OP0. Looking at the diagram, you observe that this is where demand curve and supply curve meet. If you take it down to quantity axis, we have Q0. Take it down to price axis, we have P0. So the equilibrium price will be what? 0P0. Because this is where we have the intersection of the two. So the right answer is letter D, P0P0. Example 2. Using the diagram above, at price OP2, A, demand exceeds supply, B, supply exceeds demand, C, demand equals supply, D, OQ2 is the quantity supply. The right answer is demand exceeds supply, which is a letter A. From the diagram, the price axis P2, the quantity axis here. So this is demand curve, this supply curve. Demand curve is greater, exit here than our supply. So that's why the right answer is A. Demand is greater than supply. Question 3. A market equilibrium exists when A, demand and supply are equal, B, market is large, C, the price is fluctuating, D, demand exceeds supply. The right answer is A, demand and supply are equal. Letter B, letter C, and letter B, they are not talking about equilibrium. But the only one talking about equilibrium is demand and supply. So when we're talking about equilibrium, we want two variables to be equal at the same time. So the market is large, it's not talking about equilibrium. The price is fluctuating, it's not talking about equilibrium. Demand and supply, it's not talking about equality between two